Okay, you guys, we are going to go over using masking fluid, also referred to as frisket, which is the one that we have in classroom currently. Looks like this, but they come in all different colors and kind of looks to them. So Blick liquid frisket, again, masking fluid, essentially a glue that we're going to use to block the paper that will then peel off. Notice most containers have some buildup if they've been used before and can be an issue there. And the orange, the bright neon orange, tends to settle on the bottom. So you really have to spend some time mixing and making sure that that gets stirred in. The orange is meant to show up so that I can see the difference from the paper and where I actually applied the frisket. So first thing is making sure you actually stir that up before we use it. So things that you're going to need when you get to this step, actually let me back up. First step is drawing a flower, and we use some still life flowers that you're simply observing and drawing to the best of your ability. Contour line, meaning no shading, just the outside edge of the flower itself. You can do one flower, you can do multiple, you can do the entire vase with it. That's up to you. I chose one flower and a couple of leaves that kind of are part of it and a little bit of the stem. That's how much I did, and I kind of faded off down below. That's fine. I want space to practice this watercolor technique, and it's more about the painting than the drawing itself, so don't get hung up on how perfect your flower drawing is. That's not a big deal. Okay, so I drew the lines. I would recommend drawing much, much, much lighter than I did right there. In fact, you could even grab a yellow colored pencil or a white or a light gray so it doesn't show up. What's going to happen is that graphite is going to mix in with my paint, and that's not a good thing. I drew it darker so you can see it on the video, but please note you want to go way lighter than that. Then, of course, I need my watercolor paint. I need my paper towel ready to go. I folded it, so I have it right nearby here. A little bit of water and several brushes. For this activity, I actually picked a very uncharacteristic large brush. I usually don't use this large of a brush, but for splattering, you can see it's going to be very helpful to have those big bristles. I'll put some of those out for you guys, and then a few different sizes so I can kind of use the different techniques. Before you actually start, you'll have to apply your frisket and then let it dry. So for the one I did here, I decided to leave where the pencil line is open, so I actually applied this masking fluid here and then the background. So what will fill in between will be color. So anything that you apply this to will be blocked and will remain white. So anywhere you place this, it will remain white. So think through that. You could outline it. You could simply have solid areas blocked in. You could block the whole flower. You could have just the background, and then you go in and paint the actual flower separate. Anyways, make sure to look at a few of the examples I've had for you guys. There's a lot of different ways to do this. Then you need to give it a little bit of time so it's dry. It stays pretty sticky. It's sticky to the touch right now, but you're going to need to wait some time for it to dry. It does dry pretty quick, but hopefully within the same day you can get to the next step. So do make sure it's not completely sticking to your hands before the next step. Then choosing your colors. Color wheels are available for you to look at. I want you to choose 3 in a row colors on the color wheel. So for example, that might be the cool colors. That also might be just green, blue. I can do a primary, a secondary, and a tertiary color, or I can skip and do primary, secondary only. So those 3, for example. Either way, they need to be next door. So I can't do an orange and then a blue. That won't work. I went all the way across the color wheel. As long as they're 3 in a row, that will work good, and it'll naturally have some really good blending. So I'm going to stick with probably the cool colors for this example, but you could do the warm colors or some kind of combination between. For example, like the orange, the red, and the violet, that would work as well. Okay, so first things first is just getting some water down, and a lot. You can see how big my brush is. And I'm going to use two brushes at the same time. And again, I've already picked my colors. So I've got my cool colors I'm going to use. And I applied water first. And I am just going to start really loosely applying various colors that I've picked. So I can do blue and I can do green. You need a lot of water for this part. Now, notice it's got some puddles. The next step, once you apply a couple of those colors, I want you to actually pick up your paper and do some swirling, depending on how big your puddle is. And yeah, I am making a mess, but that's okay. We're going to clean it up later. So don't worry about that. We'll clean up the tables later. All right, back to it. I want to do some more. This time I'm going to maybe get in there a little bit more with my small brush, but still a lot of water happening. It won't look like much for a while because you've got that orange on there and it's hard to picture what's going to happen, but again, that is blocking everything. Okay, the next part, I'm going to do some background so it gets really big. So big brush is going to happen. Splatter. I want you to have some swirling and some splatter on this one. This is essentially your background. All right, now I'm going to go in and do some a little more detailed. I'm kind of just looking for areas that have water that can react, like you're seeing right there. And if I feel like I've done too much of one color, I might switch it back to my blue that I started with. And you can see it kind of pulls right there. The water does the work. So a lot of water happening here. And then I've got, of course, this whole background. I could fade into a lighter blue. I don't want to take away all my splatter, but some of it I do. I'm going to do a little bit more here with the water going on this side. Again, it's really just a big puddle of violet. That's okay. A couple of pops of the other color. So that swirl is what I was trying to achieve. So some of that violet, and then I'm going to go the other way. Lots of water happening here. I'm going to actually give it a little movement a few ways. Don't go overboard though. It'll all mix together and you won't see the difference in colors. So it's really just a few swirls and we call it good. Maybe I want to go this way a little bit. Okay. Once you've got a lot of swirls going on, you've attempted swirling the paper with a lot of water with a couple of colors, 2 or 3, no more than 3, and you've done your splatter. Again, take an extra moment to get in there and do some detailing of maybe where the dark versus the light is of the flower itself. We will go back into it later. However, we do want some areas to have some value, dark to light fading. So I'm going to start that process now. At this point, it just looks like kind of an abstract mess, and a controlled mess, controlled chaos, as it should. We want it to be loose. This is the aspect of practicing that loose painting style and losing control over what you're doing a little bit. Now I'm in a controlled setting. I've put Frisket, this liquid masking fluid, down, so really no matter what I do, it's still going to look like the flower that I started with. So I'm just taking some time to edge kind of some of the areas and see what happens there. I like this area darker, so I'm going to go back over that, and the water will pull that. And at some point, it will be too much. So I kind of need to decide when enough is enough, because it gets carried away quick and kind of too much. I want a couple of pops of dark, so I keep going back to that. If you want it to be darker, you have to revisit it a few times. And I am just about done with this layer. We have to let it dry. I think I want my edges to have a little bit of splatter. I see some white that I'd like to deal with. There, and I wanted some of that turquoise kind of blue color to peek in the sides. Okay. You can still see the form, it's there, and all of the orange will be removed and will be white, and then I can go back in eventually and paint where that's blocked if I choose to do so. It actually still looks like a flower, even though it's not as straightforward. This is the beauty of art. We can take it into interpretation any way we like. This is your layer 1 for learning how to use masking fluid. Okay, we are going to continue on with part 2 of learning how to use masking fluid with watercolor on our flowers. So at this point, because it's a little time heavy, meaning it took a while, we've already removed the frisket, the masking fluid. So that can be done by simply just kind of rolling your hand, your finger, and pressing and rolling it over, and then getting a little bit and peeling it off. And you'll see where that was blocked, all the white will remain untouched. So first step is removing all of that, and then of course throwing it away. And go over it a few times so you don't feel any like that at the end, making sure you do have every little speck of it. And then you're ready to actually start adding your details. So with any painting that we're going to be doing as our final, you would use this technique to map out any of those extreme whites, those highlights, and then you can still paint into it later. You could block and then have it be a different color. Any strong edge or any highlights are going to be ideal for masking fluid. So what I chose to do is actually have the paint go in the negative space, which is the in-between. It's where I put my pencil lines. And you could have done it in a different way. There's no wrong way to do this. It's all just learning how to use this properly. But you'll notice it's not a perfect edge on some of these areas, and I'm going to go in and refine that. I don't like the edge here. That's a little extreme from white to that fade. So this is when the details come in. I could switch to another color, but I'm going to stay with that same cool colors going on. Excuse me. So I'm going to first edge some of those areas that I felt like did not act as clean as I would like. So I'm using a very detailed brush. I could probably go even more than that. I'm not using as much water at this point. So let's say I want that to be a little edge of a flower. Let me show you exactly what I'm doing here. So this edge is rough right there, simply just using a detailed amount of paint, meaning it's not very watery, and cleaning that up. This was originally a leaf right here, so I'm actually going to fill that in a little bit more and give it that edge dark. You could leave it choppy like it was, that's okay, but really it's you, the artist, deciding what you want to do with it. What I like, what happens is that's a faded color violet, and I can push the darks and give it a little more contrast without that much effort, because when I did the swirling, it naturally faded the color a little bit. So you can see how much more that pops out just by giving it some detail within. Okay, so another area I would like to work on. I don't like what's going on right here. I just realized I was about to move on. I don't like that connection. Right now it's really white right next to the color. So I'm going to use my paper towel to judge this, but I want to fade near the flower petal edge. I'm going to make that really dark right underneath there, because if you're picturing what would actually be happening, this would be the highlight, and then there'd be a shadow because the light wouldn't hit under the petal, is what I was about to say. All right, now, as I do that, I'm going to fade it just like I would with any other value. So I'm right in here right now. So I want to go dark, use pure water on my brush, pulling that edge really quickly. I can have it be, actually reverse that. So it goes dark to light. That's the type of details we want to spend some time on this step. You can see what happens even with just those two spots. It's a great way to do that. I'll do that a few times. So I'm going to put some paint here. And that's all the paint I need, and then I can start to fade to a highlight. It's a little bubble, so I dry brush helps. Remember, if you go too far, that one's carrying just a little too far. I can kind of back that up. So I'm trying to find some areas of value that I go in detail. That is your next requirement. And that could be on the inside part of the petal where it goes dark to light. That'll make it look really cool. Any petal going in, whatever the petal shape is, it doesn't matter. Dark, medium, light, all the way to that highlight, if that's the way you did that, is a great option if you're not really sure where to add it. Beyond that, it's really just blurring and kind of blending some kind of hard edges that we're not super happy about. For example, right here. I don't want that extreme white edge. So I can go back to some of my loose painting and just fix some of those areas that need a little more attention. And it might be revisiting some swirling and splattering. Just be careful because you're no longer blocking the areas that need to be blocked. So as long as you keep it a little more controlled, you can do some of that swirling. For example, up here, I can kind of angle it and give a few drips, but I'm not going to go this way because I want to keep that now that I've gotten it. So again, I've faded this edge a little more, gives kind of that texture going on. I want some of that. And that's what you're going to keep doing. So detailing out, again, this is an area I probably would add some value right here. Anywhere that's kind of inside whatever that flower is you designed is going to be a good area to start with. Dark to light. You can see it's starting to just define a little more as I go. I have a lot more areas to go with that. So good luck, have fun.